Welcome to New Perspectives on RVN Television. I'm your host, Barry Lefkowitz. Were you aware that at least 5 million taxpayers each year cannot pay their taxes on time or don't pay their taxes? So the question for today's show is, what if I can't pay my taxes? Or what if I have a dispute over my taxes? In the case of the two questions raised, taxpayers need a payment alternative, and they are left with wondering what happens if they pay late or are disputing the IRS decision on their taxes. There are 4 alternatives for those paying late. Request an extension of up to 120 days, installment agreements, currently not collectible status, and what we call offer in compromise. Settlement for less than what you unpaid in your taxes. Currently, there's a 7% interest to be paid. However, the failure to pay penalty is equal to 1/2 of 1% per month or part of a month, up to a maximum of 25% penalty of the amount owed. To share with us her expertise with dealing with late payment or not paying your taxes is our guest today, Jo Ann Weiner, who is owner of J.L. Weiner and Associates, an extraordinary woman with a wealth of experience and background. Jo Ann, welcome to New Perspectives. First of all, I think it's going to take the audience by surprise, but can you share your professional background?
Absolutely, and thank you for that lovely introduction. I'm a forensic certified fraud examiner. I'm a forensic accountant. I worked for the IRS for over 35 years. At the IRS, I conducted audits. I managed people. I was what's called a grand jury examiner and manager. I was a territory manager. I did all of that for 35 years, and my experience at the U.S. attorneys gave me knowledge in forensics. So when I retired in 2009, as
a child?
I did.
Yes.
I actually did. Thank you for that. So when I retired, the IRS invited me back to teach the revenue agents corporate tax law. I went back and I taught. And then that program ended, and I decided I'm too young, just like you said, and I have something to give back.
Right.
So I decided to start J.L. Weiner and Associates. So by 2013, I incorporated myself in 2012, and I started speaking to different groups, and I started to get referrals, and my business took off. I now have a practice that consists of a couple different things. Something called tax controversy resolution,
okay,
which is just like what it says. When there's tax controversies, some of which you just described.
Disputes.
Yep, absolutely. I will step in, and why wouldn't I do that, right? Why wouldn't I do that? I did it for 35 years, but from the other side, so I've knowledge. When you don't use your knowledge, what good is it? My theory has always been, knowledge is powerful, but you have to use it, and you've got to share it. If you've got that knowledge, you should share it with others who need it. So the first portion of my practice is tax controversy resolution, sometimes called compliance work.
Okay.
In addition...
And what do you mean by compliance?
I mean, for me, I mean tax controversy resolution.
Okay.
So when you have some sort of problem with the IRS, don't face it alone. Work with someone who knows something about it. I know a little bit about it. I know a lot about it. I worked there for 35 years.
Right.
And I've had a lot of experience resolving things. I went back and got my certified fraud examiner license. And using that, I marry that with my experience at the IRS, and I work on business litigations. I work on determining assets in divorces, and it works out beautifully. So those are the 3 components of my practice: tax controversy resolution, working on business litigations, and determining assets in divorces.
Now, go back for a second. What is business litigation?
It could be somebody, it could be two people could be in business together and then they decide to sue each other to separate.
Right.
I one time had a case where a person was thinking they were in partnership with another person, and that person kind of took all of their money and assets and told them they had no money left, no assets left, and tried to really be like a corporate raider. We could say like a corporate raider type person,
Okay.
right? That's a business litigation. I'm currently working on a matter with an estate where there's controversy over whether or not the estate should be paying more than what the owner wants to pay out. That's a business litigation, and that's what I mean by business litigation. There are many others, and we all know what happens in divorces. There's always a determination as to how should the assets be split, what should they be valued as. Is there money for alimony? So that's what I'm determining. Maybe one party says, I have no money. Maybe it's my job, it has been my job in the past, to find that job, and I'm able to marry the knowledge I have on determining income with the analysis of the books and records to really determine whether there is or isn't the funds available. Because one of the things I spent a lot of time doing when I worked at the IRS is something called an indirect method of proving income, where you're able to do an analysis of the records and the financial statements and the books and the bank accounts to determine what is actually there. In fact, I've written about this and I speak on this globally. And you might have even heard of the terminology, a bank deposit analysis or a net worth method, those kinds of things.
No, you're going to help share that with the audience because these are new terms for all of us.
For all of us. The one, in the simplest form, it's just an analysis of what's in the bank account, right? And that will, so if you say I have no money and you have 50,000 sitting in the bank account, of course you have money, right? And if you spend all of that 50,000 so that you don't have any money left in the bank account and you went out and bought houses and cars, and that's going to come out too. Or if I look at your income and your income is $100 and I look at your expenses and they're $100,000, well, one of two things has happened. You have either understated your income or you have overstated your expenses.
Now,
we don't care which one it is.
now, now, does all of this come under? You use the term, and it was mentioned at the top of the show by forensic accounting. What is forensic accounting, and how do you use it to help your clients, of which you said you have 3 different parts of your practice?
Right. The way it's a, you know what's a good way to think of a forensic? It's kind of like taking a deep dive into books and records and really making an analysis of those books and records to come to conclusion. One time I said, I was teaching people what forensic accounting is. I said it's like a CSI of books and records.
And everybody's familiar with CSI from television.
Yeah. And so what I do is I do an analysis of the records, the books, the bank accounts, the tax returns, and I will then tell you a story about the financial comings and goings of what happened. So I'm doing the forensics, that deep dive into coming into an analysis, technical knowledge of what the story is. So my report is going to be like issuing a book. And the book is the story, it's the report. And that story is what happened when I took that deep dive and put the facts into my report. And you know what, another thing, I've always, when I speak, I always tell the listeners, the students, that a lot of this I rely on the Internal Revenue Code and manual. And I always said I wanted to teach and help others because I felt that working at the IRS gives you knowledge about the Internal Revenue Code.
Sure.
But you know, it doesn't help if you can read that book all day long. If you don't know what that means, you're nowhere. If you must know about what those words mean, and then you have to know how to interpret them, and even harder, how to apply them, and when to apply them. That's what I bring, and that's what I bring to the table. I always feel like I want to be an advocate for my client. I spent 35 years doing this. I know how hard this is working with the IRS. I know how hard it is navigating those waters. And you know what? It's time for me to give back and help people. They have to want to do the right thing. They have to do what the law says. But there's so many pitfalls. There's so much confusion out there. I want to help them figure it all out, be their advocate, and get them the best possible realistic resolution. And that's what we work towards. And I'm, I feel very blessed that I was able to do this for people.
Prior to the show, a friend asked me a question that they wanted me to ask you. When you're doing the forensic accounting and you're doing all this investigation, are you able to determine when someone moves their assets into somebody else's name, and then be able to shine a spotlight on it that it was nothing more than a gimmick?
Well, that's a very good question, and that's one of the things we're looking for. Because maybe one party let's just take a divorce. And even if it's an IRS thing, that is not advised. We're not going to move money away from the account of the person being investigated by the IRS and call that, because the IRS is going to call that a dissipated asset and bring it right back in. So we're not going to do that. But let's just say it's a divorce matter. That absolutely has happened in my experience. And fortunately, that came out when I did what's called a balance sheet analysis on the corporate return for the party in question, and found that the party was suddenly not on the balance sheet, not on the list of who the owners are, but instead a different entity showed up. And when I looked at the particular person's bank accounts, saw the money still coming in, but it was coming from another company. So that absolutely did happen. And we absolutely found that money, of course. That's one of the things we would be looking for. Or if people are taking out money out of the corporation and saying they have no money, but maybe they're getting the money out of the corporation through other things, like maybe they're spending it on themselves, or maybe they're paying for some tuition or some wedding or some party. So we would look on miscellaneous deductions. We would look on balance sheet items, absolutely, and then match that up, with bank account records. Of course, that's something we most definitely look for.
So then does the IRS look at you as because of your background, because of the certifications that you have, does the IRS look upon you differently than they might look at somebody else who is advocating for their clients?
I don't know how they look at me compared to other people, but I do feel respected. They certainly understand that I know what I'm talking about. And they should absolutely 100% appreciate me, because I am absolutely trying to find a reasonable resolution for my client. However, there are times that we will go back and forth, and I really go in with something that I know is right. I'm here to speak for my client, and we get to a resolution for sure.
In other words, sort of like the bulldog on somebody's ankle.
I won't go in with it if it's wrong. I won't go in with it without proof.
Right.
I've gone through everything, and I will fight for the right thing for my client. Absolutely. I feel very successful in my practice. I know the pitfalls. I know where. It's like a precision. I know how to go in precisely and not worry about it. Sometimes people come to me and they're afraid. And I say, absolutely not. Let me take your fear. I'm not afraid at all. I got this. I got you. We're going to get through this. As long as you're willing to do the right thing, follow what the Internal Revenue Code, what the manual says, we're good.
We'll come back to that in a sec. We have to do that thing known as a commercial break. So please stay with us. Jo Ann has so much more to share with you, including this thing called offering compromise, and some other things to help you in regards to dealing with the IRS, which you talked about them coming to you in fear. I don't know anyone who's not in fear of the IRS, maybe except for yourself. But stick with us. We'll be right back.
I love that we both got an awesome network and saved money doing it.
I know, $25. I love that it's guaranteed for 3 years.
Hey, we're sitting on a sign here.
Switch and get Welcome Unlimited for $25 a line, guaranteed for 3 years. Verizon.
Have you heard? Join me, Heather Darling, weekly for a different spin on politics, business, law, and other key issues you will not want to miss right here on RVN TV.
You see, son, with a little elbow grease, you can do just about anything.
Thanks, Dad.
That's right, Robert. And it's never too early to learn you could save with America's #1 motorcycle insurer.
That's right, Jamie. But it's not just about savings. It's about the friends we make along the way.
You said it, Flo. And don't forget to floss before you brush. Your gums will thank you.
That's right, Dr. Gary.
Jamie?
Sorry, I had another thought, so I got back in line.
What was it?
I can't remember.
My dream day with Offset starts like...
Cardi, baby, get in. I surprised you with a place all to ourselves.
Thank you, baby.
You look gorgeous tonight, baby. We share our favorite McDonald's order.
And we start with a cheers. Let's eat. The Cardi B.
An Offset meal.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Hey.
Welcome back to New Perspectives on RVN Television. We're most fortunate today to have as my guest an extraordinary woman who, when it comes to understanding the IRS, with the 35 years of experience that you have as an IRS agent, I'm sure it helps calm your clients when they come to you, because you know, most people, without any question, are afraid of the IRS because most people, when they deal with government, are afraid of government because they feel that, you know, whatever the government decides it wants to do, it will do. So how do you help alleviate someone's consternation when they first come to you?
I really think that a lot of the fear is not knowing. The fear is, how do I navigate these waters? Might I lose my house? How am I going to pay this bill?
Right.
What will this do to my credit? What will this do to my reputation? What will this do to my business? Of course, of course. But right off the bat, when we get a handle on what the situation is, we can then begin to explain the steps and explain the options and know, I can tell you for sure there are options for everyone out there. I have never had a situation where there was just no option at all. Okay? Never. And so I think that that's part, and you know, the other thing I have to say, the other thing is when people hear my background and my experience and my licenses and my credentials, honestly, they tend to relax because there's no one out here better to do this I shouldn't say better, I should say no one has had that amount or type of experience and for the number of years,
right, for
sure. And wanting to be your advocate and wanting to find a solution for you. So therefore, that is one of the, the calming, and elements of it.
Now, one of your certifications is as a fraud examiner. First of all, what the heck is that? And then secondly, it actually is an important skill in being able to help your clients through the maze of the IRS.
It is, but the reason there was a reason that I became a certified fraud examiner.
Sure.
There was a reason I'm not a CPA. I'm an enrolled agent. That means I am licensed by the Treasury Department, the IRS, to prepare tax returns and to represent people in front of the IRS. Not everyone can represent people in front of the IRS.
Okay.
You have to be a CPA, an enrolled agent,
an
CPA attorney.
Being?
A CPA.
Certified public accountant.
Yes.
Okay.
Or an EA, enrolled agent, or an attorney. So people can come in and be witnesses, but that's it. You cannot go to appeals unless you're one of those things. And I worked at the IRS for 35 years. When I retired, all I had to do was apply for my EA certification, and I got it. Everybody who works there a number of years can do that. If you don't, you have to take a test. So I didn't have to do that. But because of my experience at the IRS and the indirect methods of proving income, the special enforcement work, the forensics at the U.S. Attorney's Office, I felt that that married beautifully with the certification called Certified Fraud Examiner, because it's what I had been doing for many years. And as a Certified Fraud Examiner, you're doing just that. You're actually looking into fraud. You're taking a deep dive into these fraudulent matters. And I thought, I think it's as hard as a CPA exam, but you know what? I said, I can do this. And I did it. And I'm thrilled to have it because I use that to say I'm getting business litigations because of my experience as a certified fraud examiner and my forensic background, as well as the matrimonial matters. As an enrolled agent, I represent people at the IRS for all matters. It can be an audit, it can be a civil disposition from a criminal case, it can be as an expert witness. Mm-hmm. And you know that to be an expert witness, you have to become like deemed by the judge or the mediator. They're the ones that determine whether you're an expert or not, based on your background, based on your experience, based on your interview. No one walks in there saying, I'm an expert. That has to be decided. Although, in my case, the IRS actually sends people, revenue agents that they would like to speak for them, to expert witness training. And of course, I did that for a week in Washington. Right. So it wasn't like there was no experience. I had that experience already. So it all kind of meshes together. It all blends beautifully. And thus, I pursued the Certified Fraud Examiner license and got it. And that is how I work that into my practice. I like to stay in my own lane. I like to do what I do. I don't like to do what I don't do. So I stick with those three things.
It's known as knowing what you know and knowing what you don't.
Right. That is what it is. That's right. Yes.
You know, in the pre-prep, you and I were talking, and I was astounded to find out that presently there are 22 million taxpayers that owe the IRS money. Now, how is that possible, and what would be a solution or compromise? Because you've talked to me about two different elements, and this is where you get into what you finally refer to as OIC, offer in compromise. So if you can kind of help us meander all of what this is, and how is it possible that 22 million people are still owing the government money?
I only know that because I am part of a mastermind group. There's 400 of us. Okay. This year, we're probably going to have 600 in the group. And it's called the Tax Rep Network, and we talk about these things all the time. So that's how I knew that. How it got to that point, we can point to pandemic. We can definitely point to that. And now the IRS had a huge backlog, and they were not enforcing the way they should have been. So it all backlogged. But now that backlog is reasonably kind of caught up. They're almost caught up. So now they're going to start working on those 22 or 20 or 21 million people that owe money. So this is a wonderful opportunity for me to tell your viewers that there are options available. The IRS is not going to send out 20 million or 22 million letters, absolutely not all at once. What they're going to do is send them out little by little. And it's not for the benefit of the taxpayer that they're doing this. They're doing it for the benefit of their employees, because the employees would not be able to handle that type of workload.
Right, they'd be overwhelmed.
Totally overwhelmed.
Okay.
So we're going to see an increase in July, in August. So if a revenue officer is closing 5 cases this month, remember their manager is going to give them maybe seven more cases to, backfill for those. They're not going to give them 5 more, they're going to give 7. And then maybe they're going to give them 9 more. So the goal is to start feeding this stuff in. And what I'm suggesting is that where there are people that owe money, that they take a proactive approach and take a look at what might be available for them. I'm also very interested in telling you about the Offer in Compromise program. It is a program that allows people to offer something less than what the balance due is in order to settle the debt. But there are many obligations to that offer. There are many requirements to that offer. There are many rules to that offer.
Now, are you saying that someone can actually pay less than what they owe in this Offer in Compromise?
Not only am I saying that, but I'm also saying that when you offer, you're offering away penalties and interest. You can never, you know, interest is going to, they'll say, we can never get rid of the interest, you're always going to owe the interest.
Right.
But with an Offer in Compromise, you can, because you're going to pay less than what you owe. So of course, some of that interest and penalty will go away as well. But let's talk about this a little bit. We have to be smart. There is a whole calculation. There is so many things that are allowable, that are not allowable. But just in its basics, if you owe the IRS $50,000 and you have $500,000 in the bank, guess how much your offer is going to be?
Full amount.
The full amount.
Right.
Common sense. They're not going to give you an offer when you have all that money sitting in the bank. I've had someone like that, and I did get rid of the penalties, and I got rid of the correlative interest that happened, the decrease, because the penalties dropped. So that's one way to look at it. Somebody said to me, I owe the government $100,000. Jo Ann, what do you think we should offer? It's not what Jo Ann thinks. It's a calculation.
Sure.
Right? And so it doesn't, maybe when we do the calculation, you owe 100, and when we look at the whole calculation, the calculation says you got to pay 400,000, because it's about the calculation.
Correct.
It's not about what you owe. And the calculation consists of two elements. The first element is called the reasonable collection potential. And what that means is if you have $100 in income for the month and your bills are $50 a month, $50, the difference, is going to be part of the reasonable collection potential times 12. And that number is your first part of the first element of how we calculate this.
Right.
The second portion of the offer is going to be based on your assets, whatever assets you have. But they're going to give you a little discount. So you're going to take 80% for quick sale value instead of the 100% of the value. So those two things together will be your offer. It's much more to it, but for now, just in general, think about that. And you know what? Sometimes people say to me, oh God, my expenses are so high. My charge cards alone. No, because they limit expenses. There's our national standards that anybody can look up.
Correct.
So if you spent $600 at the food store, doesn't mean they're going to allow $600. You gotta think about
Now,
that.
unfortunately, we actually ran out of time, but I want you to quickly tell people how they can contact, and we're going to have you come back,
I would
because
love
there's
to.
still much more to help people understand the IRS. So, Joanna, if you'll look right into that camera there and tell them how they can contact you.
If you have any questions, absolutely, give me a call. My number is 609-744-9389. I'll just give you an idea of where you stand, what I think would be the best option for you, and I would be happy to give you my opinion.
Joanne, thank you so very much.
Thank you so much for having
My
me.
pleasure.
It's been lovely.
And to my audience, as always, I thank you for allowing me into your homes each and every week. Please stay safe, stay well, and I'll see you next week. Take care.